Very squeaky floor. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Coffee with Father James. I'm drinking from the Holy Spirit. It's a good thing to do. I want to ask you a question. What is the greatest gift that we as a parish have to offer our city, our community, our world? What is the greatest possession of our parish? You know, we do a lot of things. The work that our parish does with the poor and the needy here in Dartmouth is massive. It's incredibly inspiring. The impact, I think, on our community is considerable for a community our size. But the greatest treasure we have in the church is the person of Jesus. That is the greatest thing that we have to offer. Not just bread, but the bread of life. Pope Paul VI once said that he was a pope like way back, like ages ago in the 1970s. He said the church exists to evangelize. He said that in 1975, I believe. And that at that point, that was, I mean, even today Catholics say evangelization, that's not a Catholic thing. Can you imagine how people responded to that in 1975? But it was a reference to some of the key insights from the Second Vatican Council. This document that he wrote this in was published 10 years after the close of the Second Vatican Council. It marked a new era in the church. Do you know that 6 years after that, Pope John Paul II would say these incredible words? He said that in our church, evangelization was to be primary, it was to be preeminent and preferential. That's quite a statement. What does that statement mean for Our Lady of Guadalupe Parish? Well, primary, it means it's a reminder that our primary purpose is to evangelize, is to help people and come to know Jesus, not just know about him, that's catechize, but to know him, to come into relationship with him, to be converted to him, to become his follower. That's what evangelization is. That's the making of disciples. Remember Matthew chapter 28, Jesus marching orders to the church to go to all nations, to all peoples, and make disciples, you know, and then baptize them and teach them everything. That's our core mission. And so it is primary. It's the most important thing. And I think for many of our parishes, including our own, we still struggle with that because we still see it as this optional thing that you might or might not want to eventually get around to doing at some point. And if we do it, then it's just one program among other programs. See, evangelization can never be a program. It has to be the lifeblood. It has to be the air we breathe, that we have the greatest treasure. We have the treasure that was buried in a field and we found it and we can't keep it to ourselves. We've discovered the pearl of great price and we can't keep it to ourselves either. That would be very, very selfish. And so it's primary. It's preeminent. What exactly does this mean, or what did Pope John Paul II mean by this? Well, I'm not entirely sure, but we can take a guess that preeminence has to do more with its theoretical importance, its theoretical primacy perhaps, its theological primacy. When we say it's primary, I think that has a sense of functionality or operationally it ought to be primary, which means it ought to be first, not just in principle, but in action as well. But preeminence has to do with the heaviness, the weight of this great task, that theologically, philosophically, whatever, that it's the most important thing, that we be convinced of that. And then finally, preferential. And that simply means that we're open about its primacy. We profess it to be the most important thing. You know, over the years as a pastor in all the parishes I've been in, I've always had a passion for evangelization. Ever since I encountered Jesus in an incredible life-changing way when I was 17 years old, I remember that first night just feeling two things. I wanted more of this Jesus, and I wanted my friends to discover Jesus. I wanted them to experience this. I had a desire for others who didn't know Jesus to come to know him. That's evangelization. I didn't know that at the time. But over the years as a priest in different churches, that's always been a desire. I'm not satisfied with just us having our faith and celebrating it and not, I'm not saying that we don't care, but sometimes it seems that way in the church, that we don't really care that much that others don't know him. I've never been able to settle with that. And so over the years, I've often been accused of having a preference, of being biased. And I do have a preference. I have a preference for evangelization. And the church says that evangelization ought to be preferential. So there you go. I'm openly preferential for evangelization. Because it's the most important thing that we do. It's what the church exists for, principally, to make disciples. And then, of course, it's not the only thing. We have to gather the disciples. We form a community. We gather together to celebrate the Eucharist. We bring people to the sacraments and such. But, you know, cultural Christianity, cultural Catholicism is dead. And so if we don't become a church that makes disciples, there won't be a church to gather for the Eucharist. There won't be a church to serve the poor. And so even from the perspective of self-preservation, it becomes pretty darn important. Our chosen tool of evangelization is Alpha. And I know that, again, some of you are saying, oh, is he talking about Alpha again? Yes, I am, because it's about evangelization. And evangelization is primary, preeminent, and preferential, the 3 Ps. So we have to keep talking about it. And I'm going to be openly preferential. And I'm going to say that, you know, of all the activities that we do, outside of celebrating the Eucharist, which is the source and the summit of the Christian life, but the Eucharist is meant to give rise to action. The most important thing we can do is evangelization. So Alpha is up there, and we need to, I'm not going to say we need to, that sounds so preachy, but look who's talking here. But I'm going to invite all of us to really grow in our ownership of that this ain't, you know, as long as I'm your parish priest, this is not going to go away. Alpha is an incredible tool for people to hear the gospel in a fresh way, in a new way, or for the first time. A lot of people today haven't heard about Jesus. They don't know. And it's a great tool for people to encounter the Lord and to experience his love, to experience the Holy Spirit, to experience God the Father, and to be brought into the life of the Trinity, to be brought into the life of the church, to be moved towards the sacraments, to experience Christian community, to experience friendship. And you've heard me say this before. You may say, well, I don't need that stuff. I already have that stuff. Well, I'll tell you, I know from my own life that I need it constantly. I need it more and more. You know, we can be filled with the Holy Spirit, but the problem is we leak. Well, at least I do. We need to seek it again and again. And so going back to the basics, you know, hearing the gospel in a fresh way is always restorative for our souls. And so if you haven't yet done Alpha, please, for your own spiritual health, I encourage you to do it. And even if you somehow didn't need this spiritual injection and growing in community and faith, this is our chosen evangelistic tool. And my hope is that every single parishioner learns Alpha, about Alpha, and how to invite others to Alpha, how to invite people to an encounter with Jesus, because evangelization is primary, preeminent, and preferential. So our next Alpha is coming up. It's going to be on a Wednesday morning. That's right, we're changing it. We're not having an evening Alpha this time around. We're going to try morning Alpha. And it starts on Wednesday, February the 7th at 9:30, right here in the parish center. You see the table behind me. There won't be a full meal, but there will be 9:30 in the morning appropriate food and beverages, such as coffee, and the usual presentation and small group discussions in a very welcoming, non-threatening way. So if you haven't yet done Alpha and you're free during the mornings, this is your chance. This is your chance to do it. But I'm not going to stop there. I'm going to invite you to stop and think right now. What about your neighbor? What about your friends who maybe not be connected with church, or may not know Jesus, or may not, their spiritual life might not be fully alive what it can be. It's the greatest gift you can give to another person. And I hope that you will pray about that and discern about your own participation, but also who else you could invite. Thanks, and God bless.